Thank you. Thank you. So, when I heard Melissa talk, and she said when she was growing up, she was blank, I automatically felt good. I was like, thank you, God. I don't feel so stupid anymore, you know? And then when I heard Ngozi say, I don't have slides, I said, thank you again. I don't have any slides, you know? As a director in theater, my life is made up of stories. My concepts, my characters have been defined by the stories and experiences I've had growing up. So I can only hope to share some of these stories and hope we make sense out of these stories. So I'll just tell you a few. Growing up, my mom told me I was really good at drawing. She said I used to draw so good that people would stop and stare. And then years later, like over 20 years later, someone sees me on the road and he says, do you still draw? I'm like, I used to draw. You know? And funny enough, the only memory I have of drawing was I used to pay people to draw for me. So I'm wondering, where did the talent go, you know? And I now also remember my brother. Growing up, if you ask my brother for a piece of plantain he's eating, he will say, give me 2 pieces of yam and I'll give you 1 piece of plantain. And I watched my brother struggle with architecture all of his life when I could see a businessman in him. And he couldn't really see the businessman in himself. Not because he didn't want to see it, but because he had been given an image of it to work with. Bring me to the point. I am talking on imagination and motivation. I don't have a slide, but that's where my topic comes in. So, you know, I kind of, growing up, I had this thing with stickmen. I didn't have toys. My dad was not a fan of toys. He felt it made us weak. So I used canes and all that to make my own characters. But I was so detailed about my storytelling, I could tell how the villain would die. I would want him to be hit by a car off a bridge where he would fall into some hot boiling water and get eaten by alligators. I was that detailed by the stories, you know? But I never really paid attention to them because I was given an image of which to work with. I was told to go in a particular line that I would be successful if I went that way, regardless of how I felt about that line. And so I embarked on that journey of being successful. And I got into school. The worst days of my life began. So, I kind of got through primary school. It wasn't so bad, you know. I was bullied, but there was just a way to get through school. Then I got to secondary school. And I remember my first result in secondary school, GS1. You know, my heart was beating. I saw comrades falling left, right, center, repeat. So, you know, I was like praying, God, if you just get me across, I will be a good boy for the rest of my life. And so I got my result and I saw promoted on trial. Who cared about the trial? I was like DiCaprio. You know, I just stretched out my hands like DiCaprio, like, yes. And so I went home with this swag in my shoulders and I walked into my father's room and I dropped the result and I'm like, what does it say? Say it. And he said, promoted. I'm like, yes. And then the other part came. I saw his face and he said, on trial. And instantly I realized I just walked into an ambush because I was so far into the room, I realized I was far from the door. And the rest, as they say, is history. So, I kind of struggled, you know, like a soldier crawling in the dirt, just 1, just 2, just 3, barely dodging the bullet of repeat. And I got to SS1, and I found a new motivation for going through school. A crush, a half-caste girl. I was like, thank you, Lord. So when I would think of going to school in the morning, and I feel bad, I would think of this girl, and I would imagine us skipping down the sunset together, and I would get up, and I would go to school, regardless of how I failed, and how I was bullied or beaten. So I was like Superman and Clark Kent. In class, I was the dumb kid, you know, with the glasses and all. I didn't wear glasses, but I was like the dumb kid in class. And then by break time, I was Superman for this crush I had. And, you know, she had this clan. And she was my senior. She was a step ahead of me. Pretty bold stuff, right? And I would ginger myself, as we say in Nigeria. I would ginger myself to talk to her like day by day. It took me like an entire year to finally talk to her. And all I said was, hi, my name is Michael. And so, somehow, finally, they sent a sniper for me. And he had the kryptonite bullet repeat on it, and he fired, pow! And they got me. I repeated, yes, I did. And like that wasn't bad enough. I think God was really upset with me for failing so much in school. that one of them days, because of my records of truancy, they put me in front with little kids. I was like bigger than them. And of all days, for this crush of mine to come back to school and collect her result, she came back that day. And she didn't stop at the admin block. She came to class to greet the teachers. And she came with her entire clan. And so she came into my class. And, you know, here was the teacher, here she was, and there I was. And I automatically saw this expression on her face, like, and the entire clan was like, I was like, God, if there was any time we needed an earthquake in Nigeria, it would be now, so I can fall, you know, underneath. But the earthquake didn't happen. I experienced that like 2 more times. I couldn't tell why. I just kept meeting her after repeating. And she had that look, you know, in the sense of the word, I felt crushed. But if you were to judge me by these stories, you would say, this kid wasn't so smart in school, you know. And the thing is, I asked myself, where were all the storytelling factors? Where were all the things I was good at, all the imaginations I had? And I really had to stop and face reality one of them days. And I realized that I couldn't become that image that they gave me. My mom told me I wanted to be a commissioner. I didn't even know commissioner of what. My uncle was a good commissioner, and I don't even know he was a good commissioner. I just know he had a good house. His kids had toys. I used to travel abroad. So I wanted to be a commissioner. You know, I wanted to have a good house and all that. And now, when I really questioned the whole concept, it occurred to me I didn't even know what I wanted to become. I didn't have an image. My imaginations were dead, simply because I paid attention to another image for so long, I couldn't remember anything. The thing is, I kind of embraced what I was all about. I just took the challenge, and like she said, I became a rebel, and a very good rebel at that. And I embraced the idea of storytelling and twisted theater, not what everybody would understand. But when I did that, I was faced with another challenge. I was now faced with the question of people asking, so this is what you're into? Wow. So how do you expect to get fed? You know, like, how will you get married? I'm like, I thought I was past this. And all of a sudden, I understood the problem we're having in Nigeria. I could understand the mechanic that would walk into a studio and think he was a good musician. And he will record something so horrible that you will be thinking of where to go to when you hear it and just refresh yourself. I could understand the engineer that had no idea about construction but had struggled so long through school just to become someone that could answer engineer. I could understand the mass failure in JAM because I could see that these people had all neglected who they were, everything that was inside them, and had worked with an image of what had been given to them. So everything that motivated them was that image that had nothing to do with their future, and they had abandoned the imaginations that were supposed to be their very own motivation towards success in life. So I was going through this research. This is where I start sounding smart. I was going through this research, this whole experiment, and I read about this Harvard Business School professor, Teresa Amabil. She wrote an article on how to kill creativity. And she talked of an experiment she handled where she had 2 groups of children. And to one group, she gave paint and a picture, and she said, paint a picture. And to the other group, she gave paint, picture, and she told them, I'll give you a sweet if you paint a good picture. And after the experiment, she found out that the first set had consistently better pictures than the second set, simply because the second set was distracted by the idea of the sweet they would be given at the end of the painting. And I found out that that's basically what we are dealing with in Nigeria right now, where people are doing things because of what they will get at the end of it, rather than what is inside of them. And so based on that research, she came up with the intrinsic motivation principle of creativity, and in which she stated that people are most creative when they are motivated primarily by the interest, satisfaction, and challenge of the work itself, rather than external factors. So, at this point, I'm thinking, at this rate, with how we motivate people, and funny enough, some of our parents, no harm, they didn't intend any harm, told us, you will be comfortable in life if you're an engineer. You will do this, you will do that. In short, some of them were hoping to escape their own problems through us. If you become a good doctor, then, you know. So we were on that quest to become good doctors so that we could stand and say, yeah, my son is a doctor. When? How could you do that to me? But my dad didn't say I should become a doctor, you know. But finally, you can identify with these people And all of a sudden you find that you don't have so daft people in this country. You just have people that have ignored who they are and have embraced another image. And I'm thinking that if we can just pay attention to what they have inside and nurture it, rather than replace the image and the imaginations they have, bring that doesn't work, it's not going to feed you. Become a doctor or become this. It's not bad to be a doctor and all those things. But speaking of doctor, my cousin was sick one of them days and he went to the hospital. And this doctor, I don't know how that doctor became a doctor. He sat down and he punched my cousin's rib. Is it paining you? Is it paining you? Obviously, it's paining him. He's sick. So the doctor now prescribed, diagnosis, malaria, so and so and so and so and so. And so they took my cousin to another hospital and found out he had pneumonia. So I'm thinking, how did that guy get through medical school? How did he really make it? What inspired somebody to be so crappy at medicine? Other than the fact that maybe I can open some hospital and make some money from it. In short, you don't have to go too far. We have so many schools now, the schools feel like kiosks in Nigeria. Everywhere, there's a school behind the marketplace, there's a school behind a restaurant, there's a school, there's Thank You Jesus school, there's God Be Praised school, there's school is school, And I want to do, are all these people really paying attention to the children and what they have inside, or are they using the children as a means to an end? And it's unfortunate that we live like this, because at the end of everything, we end up creating monsters in our system rather than creative people. The book, How to Motivate Creative People by Mark McGuinness, he said something. He said, if you keep motivating people with nothing but money, praise, flattery, threats, bribery, deadlines, he said you have nothing but egomaniacs, opportunists, cowards, and mercenaries. And that's why we have the kind of problems we have in government today. If you tell them, look, you're a good writer, they're like, to hell with writing, please. It's not going to get me fed. Engineering, music will get me fed. Everybody believes he's the next Two-Face Idibia. And it's so unfortunate because at times, I was in the studio once and this mechanic literally walked in and I was like, what's the mechanic doing here? Is he coming to fix something? But there's no car inside the studio. And so he walks in and he has a bundle of money in his hand, like really rough money, like he just brought it out. And then he had a piece of paper, and I heard the producer say, so is that the song? And instantly I'm like, what? I'm like, yes, that's the song, that's the song. So the producer says, so how do you want the bass line to be? And he goes like, how do you want the bass line to be? And then it occurred to me, he didn't know what the bass line was. So the producer said, how do you want the to be? I'm like, oh, yeah. So, so I want to be like this. I'm like, really? And then he kept on telling the producer this, so, permit me to use pigeon. So by the time we finish now, the song will like go blow, I go hammer. And I'm like, oh. But one thing, I'm wondering how a mechanic cannot pay attention to the fact that he's a mechanic and just focus on that. Rather, he's trying to blow behind the mic. And then we are forced to suffer for that inspiration that comes out of him. And so at that point in time, you find out that what motivates his imagination is not necessarily who he is, but the blow factor. He wants to blow. Please let me blow. So no matter how you tell him that, look, just be good at what you do. Like, please, it's not going to let me blow. And the reality of creativity is this. It's not something that happens overnight. You will definitely pay a price. But it's about time we tell people, you will pay the price. Pay the price. Simple. And be good at what you do. The idea is not to ask people, can this thing feed you? It's to tell them, make sure this thing you are good at will bring out other things. Not just that it will feed you. Because we can't keep giving them the selfish perspective of collect. But we can give them the perspective of what can this thing give to the country, to the nation, to other people. Once upon a time, people couldn't say, I want to be a blogger. But I was listening to my friend recently, and he was telling me of what he does with blogging. I'm like, Jay, I wanted to be a video game person when I was small. I used to like video games. I loved video games. But somehow, they wiped it out. How, I don't know. And years later, in short, I went to school thinking computer engineering was about video games. And I didn't even see a CPU until my third year. And so, you look at these factors, and I now heard they are game critics. They are paid like $60,000 for criticizing video games. I'm like, I will kill somebody. But it was too late. It was gone. I tried to look at people that were motivated because of what they wanted to do, not because of the factors around them. The likes of Lionel Messi in football. You look into his eyes and you see football. That young man wants to play football because it's football. It's not about the thousands of pounds they pay him. I think of the likes of MJ, king of pop. And I'm wondering what would make a man's rehearsal so good at the age of 50 that I can pay to watch it. It made the box office. What was his motivation? It cannot be money. He had all the money in the world. He had experienced everything. He had gone around the world. But he was still motivated well enough to do something so good at that age. And then you now wonder, what are we doing here? Are we really helping ourselves by saying, if you're good at this, you'll make money for it? I don't think so. I don't think we are doing this generation any good by doing that. I think we should look at them. Our role with these young people is to look at them with these creative minds and say, what is it you're good at? Now, I might not be able to give you the platform, but I can stand with you long enough till you make it on that platform and become something. And that's what it should be all about. Like the writer rightly said, Mark McGuinness, he said, motivation is not something you put in. Rather, it's something you draw out. Thank you very much.